Welcome to part 2 of the lecture videos on global marketing. And in part 2, we're going to talk about the second of the 4 Ps, placement. Now, as I mentioned, placement is just another way of saying distribution strategy. And so here's a typical distribution system. This shows you basically how a company is getting its product from the manufacturing plant to the final customer, right? And so you could have a very direct kind of process of getting the product from the plant to the customer. It could be manufactured inside of the country, and so we see these kind of, ways of doing it inside of the country, then goes directly to the final customer, or there could be a whole lot of steps along the way. The manufacturer could be outside of the country, exports to another country, there's an import agent in that other country. The import agent then sells it to a wholesaler who buys, these products in bulk and then sells them to, let's say, retail distributors, little retail stores all over the country. And then the retail stores sell that to the final customer. So you can see that in the one case, we have a very short marketing process, distribution channel. And in the other one, there's a much more lengthier channel. And so that's one of the things that one of the terms we use is channels, right? So the channel is the way the product gets from the manufacturing plant to the customer. That's the distribution strategy, but we can say we have a long marketing channel or we have a short marketing channel, or a long distribution channel or a short distribution channel. It essentially means the same thing. So there's some very important things when you're assessing a country's distribution systems and what sort of placement or distribution strategy makes the most sense depending on the nature of that country's distribution system. So what we find is that in some countries, the retail sector, that's the stores that sell to the final customer, they're very concentrated. There's just a few retail stores. Sometimes we call them big block stores. I'm thinking of a store like Walmart. And that store might sell, a lot of products to just to many customers. And if you have only a few big stores like that selling to most of the customers, we say there's a heavily concentrated retail sector in that country. On the other hand, you could say that a country that has a whole lot of little tiny stores, one in every neighborhood, every local mom and dad in the local neighborhood sells, has his or her own store. Sometimes we call those mom and pop stores, right, at every street corner. You've seen some countries where you see that kind of thing. Then we would say there's a much more fragmented retail sector, right? And so that's when you have a whole lot of little stores, and each of those stores is selling to lots of customers. So either, you've got a concentrated retail sector or a fragmented, that's going to affect the nature of your distribution system, right? And that's going to affect the marketing channel and all these other kinds of things. So the channel length is another thing that we've just mentioned earlier. That's, again, how many steps are there from the manufacturing plant to the final customers. If there's a lot of steps, it's a long channel length. If there's a few steps, it's a short channel length. Channel exclusivity means, okay, how difficult is it to get into a particular market? And so this doesn't mean high-end, snooty kinds of products. What this means is it's very difficult to penetrate that market. So, for example, many U.S. Companies complain that it's very difficult to get into the Japanese distribution system, that the Japanese wholesalers seem to buy from Japanese manufacturers, the Japanese retailers seem to buy from Japanese wholesalers, and so that's a very exclusive marketing channel, and it's very difficult for foreign companies to penetrate that marketing channel. So that's what we mean by the exclusivity of the marketing channel. When we talk about the quality of the marketing channel, what we're talking about is how highly skilled the salespeople are, right? And so what this means is that if you've got a complex product, maybe you're selling kind of the newest iPhone or something like that, you might want to have really skilled marketing people or your salespeople that are explaining this to the customers, right? And so, the local grandmother comes in to buy an iPhone for her grandkid. You want a really highly skilled salesperson that can explain this properly and show her how to use it. And so that would be a very high quality marketing channel. And so that's one of the reasons that, Apple just decided to create its own stores, right? They wanted to ensure that they had very high quality salespeople working in their stores. They wanted a high quality marketing channel. So these are the important aspects of this, and so you can clearly see that the retail concentration is a crucial component of this. This is a really important part of understanding distribution systems. How concentrated is the retail system? And in some countries, when the retail system is very concentrated, you're going to have just a few retailers supplying most of the market. I'm thinking of Walmart in the United States. In a fragmented system, there's so many retailers, and not one of them has a major share of the market. They might have just a tiny sliver of the market share. And so my own experience, for example, in Latin America, I mean, this is very true in countries like Peru. You don't even find Walmart, for example, in Peru, because there is such a fragmented retail system. The people are used to that. It seems to work better in Peru. This is also true in many cases in India, in many parts of India. So this is what we mean by how concentrated is the retail channel. The channel length, of course, is again the number of steps it takes to get from the manufacturing plant to the final customer, the number of intermediaries between the producer and the customer. And so all of this is a very important part of marketing, right? Understanding what is the channel length, because if there's going to be a lot of intermediaries, each person along the way, each sort of company, let's say the retailer, and then first there's a wholesaler, then there's the retailer, then there's someone else. So each step along the way, they're going to put their own little markup on the product. They're going to take their own little cut, right? And so the product gets more and more expensive as you finally get to the final customer. So this is something that's very true. So when the producer sells directly to the consumer, the channel is very short. When the producer sells through an import agent, a wholesaler, a retailer, then we're talking about a long channel. So in fragmented retail systems, those tend to have much longer channels, right? There's a lot of steps between the manufacturing plant to the final little mom and pop store. In consolidated channels, you have fewer steps, right? And so if you're really concerned about costs, often what you'll see is companies will say, we're going to try to get to a direct marketing channel. We're not going to just have all these steps along the way. I'm thinking of Dell. They manufacture the product and then it goes directly to the customer. In most cases, you don't even go through a store, right, to buy a Dell computer. You just order it online or you call on the phone. And so that is one of the reasons Dell was so competitive, especially at its early years, competing on price. So channel exclusivity, I've explained this earlier. This is when it's very difficult for outsiders to get access to that marketing channel. Japan, I gave an example of that. They're very exclusive. It's very difficult for foreign producers to penetrate the Japanese marketing channel. As I said, Japanese wholesalers tend to buy from Japanese producers. Japanese retailers tend to buy from Japanese wholesalers. So it's very difficult if you want to sell your products in Japan to get your product to the customers. Very exclusive marketing channel there. So channel quality, I've also explained this already. And so the expertise and skills of established retailers and their ability to sell and support the products of international businesses. So your product, if it's very complicated, if it's somewhat difficult to understand, if it takes some sophistication, you want to make sure that you're going to sell it in a country with high quality marketing channels where those are available. In the case of Apple, as I said, they didn't even want to take a chance. They just built their own Apple stores and hired their own Apple salespeople to ensure that they had very good marketing channel. So this is the quality of the retailers is good in most developed countries, but is invariable at best in many emerging markets. And so that's something to be concerned about. A low quality channel can make it more difficult for you to get your product to the customers. So all of these things are what constitute the second P in the 4 Ps, placement. And what is interesting is which distribution strategy is the best. This is what every international manager needs to know. And you, as you are assessing your company and your company project, I want you to assess, is the company that we're looking at, is it using the right sort of distribution strategy in this country? Should they have used a different sort of distribution strategy given the nature of the country? So the choice should depend on the relative costs and benefits of each alternative sort of strategy. And keep in mind, when you've got a long marketing channel, each intermediary along the way is going to add his or her own markup to that, and that could reduce your profit margin. So if price is important, a shorter marketing channel is better. If you've got a very fragmented retail sector, probably you're just going to have to use a long marketing channel. There's just no way around it. So again, these are the aspects of the distribution system.